She was found running, bleeding from her wounds and screaming, "Vampires!" Would you believe the anguished cries of a poor, distressed girl? Our tale begins one afternoon in 1932 as a young lady frantically runs down Royal Street, which runs parallel to Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Panic is visible for all to see on her face. Her appearance is alarming as she's covered in blood with her wrists bandaged like maybe she'd injured herself. As luck would have it, she runs into a police officer and is taken to the nearest hospital. Here, the doctors and officers see her wounds for the first time. They're described as being deep, but not enough to cause death. While being cared for, she tells the officers that she received them from two brothers who would feed from her every evening. They'd take off the bandages and then, using a sharp knife, would reopen the wounds until blood was flowing freely. Then, using a cup, they would collect the blood, which they drank until their thirst was satisfied. After this horrific act, the brothers would then set about applying fresh bandages to the open cuts. They apparently spoke very little to their victims and gave no concern for their well-being. It appeared that to the brothers, the kidnapped people were no more than a food source, with death fast approaching them. The young girl explained that the only reason she escaped was pure luck, as they'd been careless and fastened her restraints too loosely. As far as the brothers were concerned, she was still tied up and they were going about their day blissfully unaware of her escape. Seeing that they distrust her story, she says that she will take them to the place that she managed to escape from, and here they'd also find other victims tied up. So they follow her to a building on the corner of Royal and St. Anne. Upon arriving at the apartment, which was owned by John and Wayne Carter, two brothers who worked on the docks handling fresh seafood that came off the boats, the officers were met with the putrid smell of rotting flesh and decay. They had 4 more victims tied up, with their wrists bandaged, but wet and stained with blood, near death. Taking in the horrific view, they started to search the rest of the apartment. Upon entering one room, a further 14 dead bodies are found, wrapped up in sheets and stashed in a corner. I'm pretty sure that this must have been something that stuck with the officers. I mean, it's not every day that you hear about 2 serial killers who just so happen to be vampires. With this new information, the police set about trapping the men. They knew from the girl the brothers left the apartment early in the morning and came back at dusk, so they waited patiently, and I'm sure with some trepidation. As nighttime fell, the Carter brothers returned home, hungry and with bloodlust on their mind. But before they had a chance to begin feeding from their house guests, the police ambushed them. Now, it's said that between 8 and 10 strong officers were sent to arrest the brothers, but somehow the Carters managed to escape, but not before knocking 4 of the officers out cold and then jumping from the 3rd floor balcony. Worth noting also is that the brothers were described as being about 5'6" in height and weighing no more than 160 pounds. What kind of strength did these guys have to take on such strong adversaries and get away? As the police looked on, they could see that they landed on the ground smoothly and took off running without so much as a limp. I mean, I can't even jump from a wall without hurting myself, so this is certainly some skill that the brothers had. But was it supernatural? As formidable as the Carter brothers seemed to be, they didn't appear to be the smartest. Even after their close call with the police the evening before, they still went to work the following morning as if nothing had happened. This is where 8 officers grappled them to the floor and held them down. While in custody, the brothers confessed almost immediately to the crimes they were accused of. They even pleaded with the officers to kill them, as they stated if they were released, their need for blood would give them no option but to kill again. They could not resist their urges. In court, they were tried as serial killers and convicted of the heinous crimes. At sentencing, they were given the death penalty, and only a few days later they were hung in the town square. Their bodies were put to rest in their family vault. A while later though, another Carter family member was planned to be placed in the vault, but police were shocked to find that the bodies of both brothers were gone. vanished without one single trace. A few years later, the new owner of the apartment claimed to see two men standing on the balcony, whispering to each other. The description given matched the identity of the Carter brothers. Both figures were said to have jumped from the balcony and took off running down the street. It's believed that the brothers escaped to New Orleans to continue their bloodlust in other cities. One burning question is, though, what caused them to be so careless? I mean, it sounds like they might have been committing these crimes unseen for quite some time. The reason might be the change in New Orleans itself. You see, in early 1900s to the roaring 1920s, New Orleans was thriving. This is how the city got the nickname the Big Easy, as during this period of time, work was exceptionally easy to come by. Nightclubs were thriving and jazz music was becoming popular. This was New Orleans at its best. With this kind of vibe though, people may have felt carefree and excited, but this also leads to more risk-taking and carelessness among the residents and visitors alike. So, as you can see, it would have been easy pickings for vampires existing here during this time. Like anything though, good things never last. And a decade later, the stock market crashed, bringing on the Great Depression. Things just seemed to change overnight. No more party people lining the streets. Instead, you had those down on their luck, struggling to find their next meal and a place to stay. So this is probably what led the Carter brothers to make their mistake. Their environment changed, and they had to take more risks. No more feeding on prostitutes and dock workers. It is believed that the possible reason the girl fell victim to them is that she may have witnessed them snatching someone off the street, a case of wrong place, wrong time. Even to this day in the French Quarter, there are reportedly many sightings still of the brothers. It's said that they come back around the time of Mardi Gras each year, when celebration is on everyone's mind and a vast number of people are visiting from all over the world. It must seem like the good old days for vampires. To them, it's not the cheer of crowds, the expressive jazz music floating on the air, or brightly coloured beads being thrown that attracts them. It's the sound of the dinner bell, and faces lost in a crowd of strangers that has the Carter brothers returning once again.